I'm going to go ahead and get started. And those of you who were here last week, and I know several of you were, the goal then was to do the first part of organizing your study time, to have people think if they're too busy or not, if they've taken on too much, to learn how to know what's coming, all of that. So today we have two more questions for me to try to help you answer for yourself. Do I know how to set up a successful daily schedule, and do I know how to avoid procrastination? For some people, this is really serious, a serious problem. Other people, not as much. This is an interesting one for everyone. So this is what we're going to start with. And by a daily schedule, this is what I'm talking about. Okay, this has the entire week, every day, Sunday through Saturday, from 6 in the morning till midnight. It has a place at the bottom for the class schedule. So this is what I'm going to be referring to for about the next 20 minutes or so. And you have to help me with this. My goal at the end of the workshop is to give everybody one of these so that you can use it, hopefully, the way that I teach you today. And some people even actually use this as a master, and they make several copies. So sometimes when the workshop is over, I'm trying to get you out, and I'm trying to get out, and I forget. So just say, hey, if I forget, and I'll make sure you get one. I've got plenty of these for you. All right, so here's the first idea. When it comes to setting up a successful daily schedule, some people like schedules and like filling in boxes. Other people don't. Even those people who don't like this idea, when you learn the way that I show you how to do this, it may not convert you to somebody who uses one of these every day, but hopefully it'll help you get some ideas that you can use and sort of customize to your own way of doing things. The one thing that I wanted to say first, sort of to introduce this, is that whether you have ever actually used something like this before or not, everybody sort of knows how to use it. You just put in your life in the boxes and all that, but most people don't know a really good, successful way to use it. And so that's what I'm going to try to show you today. A lot of people have a negative attitude toward this. And so, and by the way, some people make me nervous. I guess I'm more of a schedule person, but people just say, I say, how do you decide your schedule and all that? They say, I just wake up in the morning and just sort of see where the day takes me. Yeah, so they just sort of make it up as they go along. That's nice, but sometimes you have a lot of specific things you have to do at scheduled times during the day, so you have to kind of come up with a balance. So a lot of people look at a schedule like this, and their first reaction is, I would never want to do one of these. And I say, why? And some people say, well, because it would suck all the fun out of life forever. Because the idea is that you fill out every box every day, and then you have to follow it, and that sounds awful to me too. People say I can't just do anything on the spur of the moment when I feel like it because it's all programmed or planned. Well, that's not my design with this at all, because that doesn't work. And you can kind of figure that out. Also, does life always fit according to plans? No. Some people in here, and I don't know you well enough, but some people in here have a life that's kind of predictable and steady. And then others of you, you have no idea what's around the next corner because of family issues or whatever else it is. So I'm not going to try to turn anyone in here into a slave of a schedule where you have to follow it around every day trying to figure out what to do. But I'm going to show you some things that have really helped students to get a lot more done, make their study time work a lot better for them, and it's all based on this. Okay, so the first thing is for me to jot down something and just talk to you about it for a couple of minutes, and that is, when a person is faced with a blank time management schedule and they're going to start plugging in their life in the boxes, there's a certain order that seems to help students really get a lot of use out of this. And it's not just any random order for putting things on there, it's an exact order. So this is what I want to show you first. It's a really simple concept, and that is, I ask people, what's the first thing you would think of to put on the schedule? And people say, well, my class schedule. I say, what else? My work hours. What else? My family time. All those things would need to go on there, but that's never the first thing I suggest. So here's one that might surprise you. That's what goes on there first. Okay, and the reason that this is important is because it's for mental health. to have balance. I don't know if there's anyone in here like this, and you don't have to raise your hand if this is you, but some people, when I say this, you need to allow for fun, some people say, what's that? I don't have time for that. I'll do that during the vacation. They're just like really hard driven. Other people, that's never a problem. I have some people who have fun every second of every day. They hardly ever do anything they're supposed to do, but they have so much fun. So it's a balance between the two. And so fun activities, I'll kind of give you an example of this in a minute. Next, I'm not going to write all of these down, but I'll say everything else practically. Okay, so all the things you would think that would need to go on a time management schedule, like class time, work time, family time, social time, any other thing that you do that's a regular, same day, same time every week, all of that would go on there. The order's not that important. And then, this is a strange statement coming from me for sure. The last thing that you should put on a time management schedule for sure is this. Study time. And that seems like a really strange idea coming from me because I teach study skills. And some people have said, shouldn't it be this way? You know, if you have a little time for fun, throw it in there, but if not, study 24 hours a day. You'll go crazy. If you try to study too much, you have to have balance. Why would you put study time on the schedule last? It doesn't seem to make sense, but that's what I want to show you. So I'm going to give you the first of a couple of handouts today. This is a sample schedule that's been partially filled out by a student. And I want to show you a couple of things on here first and then get to the details of why it's helpful to put study time on last. This is a pretty long teaching, actually, so I'm going to just sort of hit some highlights. Wish I could get into more detail, but no time for that. If you could pass the rest back, I think I gave you enough, I hope. There's some extras. Okay, I think that works. Okay, here you go. Okay, so I want you to look first at the bottom of the page, and I want you to notice this student whose life we're going to look at for a few minutes. They have a pretty busy school schedule. They have general business class, history, English, and math, and no matter how long you've been in college, you know that every one of those classes is going to require a lot of work, a lot of homework, a lot of reading, etc. Next to that, the days and times that the classes meet, then the total hours in class means per week, so 3 hours, etc. And then the study hours needed is based on something I taught last week, which again is that ×2 formula that you're kind of estimating how many hours you need to study. This person, as a result of all this, is in class 12 hours a week. They're going to plan to study 24 hours a week, and they also work 25 hours a week. So that's a busy person. When we look up into the schedule, we see some fun activities. Anybody see a fun activity besides sleep? Yeah, out with friends on Friday night, and then there's some TV. It's kind of scattered in there. Are they going to have more fun than that during the week? Probably, but these are the ones that they're setting aside so that they can do them and relax and not feel guilty, because you always have something to do for school. You always have a chapter to read or something else, but you need to get away from it for little periods of time. Class time is listed here. Work time. Some family time, some social time. So it's kind of like what I described up here, except what's missing? What is there none of? Yeah, study time. And this person, if you just kind of glance at this, looks like they're kind of busy. But you see a lot of open boxes scattered all around. Those are all possible study hours. Are they going to study every one of those? No. But they're available, okay? And so this brings me to the first reason why it's usually very helpful to put study time on last. When you look at your life, the best that you know it, and let's say that this is your life for right now, you look at this and you see the open boxes scattered throughout the day and the evening, and this brings up an important question or an important consideration that a lot of people never think of, and I want to talk about this for just a few minutes. It has to do with this. Best time of day. Okay? And so I'm actually going to take a quick survey of everybody here because it's always interesting for me to see this. The question is, during what period of the day usually do you have the most energy? You're the most wide awake. You're able to concentrate the best. I'm going to give you 4 choices, even though none of these might work exactly for you. One would be from 8 to 12 in the morning, 12 to 4, 4 to 8, and then 8 o'clock to midnight. So how many of you would feel like the morning time is when you're at your very best, have the most energy? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I think. How about 12 to 4? 5, 6, 7. Okay, that's almost everybody. 4 to 8, we got 1. And then how about 8 to 12 at night? 1. Well, that's an interesting, you're an interesting group. Sometimes this is the highest group, sometimes it's blended, whatever. But everybody here has a body clock that works differently than everybody else. And some of you, when you first wake up, about 10 minutes or 20 minutes after you're awake, and you're the best you're going to be all day. And a person who's a morning person, I always say that they're great here, they're good here, they're okay here. And by about 9 o'clock at night, one eye is closing and they're just dying, okay? Person who's a night person takes a long, long time to get going and then they're alive here, and everybody else, it's just sort of different. So what does this have to do with studying? Well, when would be the smartest time for any student to study? Yeah, where they have more energy, which means their best time of the day. Though everybody who raised your hand for this one, or for this one, whatever, as much as you can within reason, you should try to study during that time, during your best time of the day. When do most people study? Not at their best time of the day. And my one example, just so you understand this, is I've talked to students before and I've said this: when do you do most of your studying this semester? And they say, well, usually around 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, maybe midnight. And I say, oh, so you're a real night person, right? And they say, me? Oh no, I'm a morning person. So I say, well, why are you studying late at night? And they usually say, that's when everybody's asleep. I'm done with everything else I need to do, so now I can study. Well, that sort of sounds okay, but the problem is I ask them, when you study and you read your textbooks late at night, and remember, it's a morning person, late at night, do you remember what you read? And their answer, I never understand this, they don't just say no, they just say this: no, but I read it though. And they're just like really proud of themselves. But the problem is they close the book and go to bed, and it's like a huge eraser. Just goes away, and they have no idea. So the next day or the next day after that, what are they going to have to do? Read the whole thing over again. If you're a busy person, you don't want to have to read every chapter in your textbooks 3 or 4 or 5 times. You almost don't have time for that, so it would be good to get a lot of it the first time and then just go back and review and kind of get it settled. Well, what happens if a person can't study when they're at their best? For example, those of you who raised your hand here, maybe you're in class every day from 8 to 12. It's good to be awake when you're in class too, so that's okay. But if you can't study during this time, then what do? Well, then you ask yourself, out of the other 3, what's your second best time of the day? And try to study then. Okay, when should you never study? Yeah, your worst time of the day, whenever that is for you. And it could be here, it could be here. And so you're trying as much as you can. And again, if you look at this schedule after you've filled it out partially, like a jigsaw puzzle with all these pieces, you see some open boxes here, 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 and you just stop and say, when's my best time of the day? And if it's like from 4 to 8, then you say, okay, where are some hours that I can put in for studying during that time? That's kind of the thinking. Most people don't do that. They just study whenever. And again, I talk to people all the time and I say, when do you normally study? And they say, oh, when I feel like it. That scares me more than any statement any student could ever make, is how often are you actually going to feel like studying? You just kind of keep it drifting away. You do this, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. So that's one. And one other little idea about that I should mention too. Let's say that this is your schedule right here. Okay? If you can't study all or most of your subjects during your best time of the day, which one would be the most important to study during that period when you're at your best? And the answer to that one is your hardest class or your most boring one. Because hard classes are hard. So they take all your energy, and boring classes are boring. So they take all your energy too. And I always tell this to students too. If anybody here has one class this semester that's both of those, good luck. It's the hardest and the most boring. That's the worst combination ever. But if you have that, you just need to say, look, I'm best between 4 and 8 p.m. Math is my hardest subject or most boring or both. I've got to schedule some study time for math during that time. It doesn't always work perfectly, but it's just thinking that way. Most people just never even think that way at all. Okay, and then the other idea that I want to give you off of this sheet, among many that I could give, is what to do during a break between classes. Students are really funny with this. When I ask them, what do you have going on today? They say, well, I have a class that goes from 8 to 9:15 a.m. I say, is that it? They say, no, I have another one at noon. So they have like this 2-hour gap or 2.5-hour gap, and they're always so unhappy because they figure they messed up their schedule, because you don't want to have a break. What a waste. But actually having breaks between classes is a really good thing if you can do it. So I want you to look at this schedule. And I'm going to do a really short version of this, but I just want you to get the idea. If you look at Monday morning, this student has a general business class that goes from 8 to 9:30, and then they have a history class at 11. So that means they have an hour and a half from 9:30 to 11 off. What are they going to do during that hour and a half? Well, they could do whatever, right? If they live across the street, they can go home. But most people, they're just sort of stuck here, and they're thinking, okay, let's see, is the cafeteria open or whatever? They're trying to figure out what to do. So what I want to do, and again, this is just kind of a quick example of this. I'm going to break the hour and a half into 3 half-hour segments, okay, and ask you a question, okay, and that is, this person in the morning has their business class, then they have history. So business here, history here. What are they going to do during these half hours? Well, again, anything they want, but there's something that I have in mind that hopefully you'll kind of understand as being logical. What would be the best thing for this student to do right here in this half hour? No other time, but right there. I heard 3 answers. They were all interesting. Some people, by the way, should say this. I say, what do you do here? They say, eat. And I say, okay, well, how about here? Eat. How about here? Eat. So they got eating on their mind. Eating's important, but going to hold off on that. So what I want to, and this is kind of what you mentioned, is to review the class that you just got out of. Now, you don't have to answer this because I don't even know the answer, but I know that if we say what % of all college students are in the regular habit of reviewing a class right when they get out of it, you know that it's really, really small. You know, 5%, 3%, hardly anybody does that. They just, when class is over, and they leave. Okay? What's the benefit of reviewing here instead of here or here or here or here? Yeah, it's still fresh. What happens with every minute that goes by once the class ends? It just leaks away. You forget. Well, what you're trying to do is hold all that in your brain so that it goes more into your long-term memory, so it sticks. And so sitting in the classroom, if no other class is coming in, on a bench, in the library or whatever, and just spending 30 minutes at the most reviewing the notes that you just took that day, looking over the chapter in the textbook that was covered, if there was one, and even starting homework that was given. All these things are good. When do most people look at their notes the next time after the day they take them? Yeah, some people say the next time I go to class, and that's actually not great but not bad, but most people say the night before the test. And the problem with that in college is that that might be a few days later, but it could also be like 4 or 5 weeks later. And unless you're the greatest note taker ever, when you look back at your notes that you took 3 weeks ago, there are going to be all these parts of sentences that you didn't finish because you were trying to keep up with the teacher, other things you can hardly read, and you don't even understand the notes, and then it becomes impossible to use them, and then that affects you on the test. So if you spent 5 or 10 minutes reviewing the notes right after class, rereading them, fixing, finishing, putting a question mark, etc., and asking the next time, your notes become much better, and all it takes is a couple minutes. You know, it's a very simple thing to do. Okay, middle box, we'll use the general word break. And the idea during this time is actually to take a break. This person has been in their business class and then studying it, so they've been busy concentrating for a couple hours. And I don't know about you, but after a couple of hours, that's it. My brain and my body are just saying, I need a break, time out, right? What do you do during the break? Eating is good. Taking a walk is good. Just get outside, get some blood circulating and all that. A few other things are possible, but what I wanted to ask you, okay, and again, I'd love to get into more detail, but we won't, for eating. What kind of food should you not eat, given the fact that you have another class coming up? General kinds. Yeah, a lot of sugar, and what's the other dangerous one? Yeah, junk food. Okay, what do both of those usually do to people? Yeah. Right? And when does this happen? Oh, about halfway through this class. Okay? And you don't want to eat anything that causes you to sit there and then halfway through the next class start to completely fall asleep. So when you eat, it doesn't have to be the healthiest thing in the world, but it should be something that gives you energy for what's to come, but doesn't put you into a coma halfway through the next class. People do that all the time. I see them over at the cafeteria eating like a double cheeseburger and fries, and they probably love every bite of that, but then if I followed them the rest of the day, something horrible would happen somewhere right around in here. And of course, if you're done for the day, you don't have any other classes, you could do whatever. But again, I don't know how many of you are like this, but a lot of my students take a class at 8 or 9 in the morning, and then they have one at 11, then they have one at 1, and then one at 3. They have these long days, exhausting days, and that's hard. If you're giving yourself sort of food that will affect you that way, it's not so good. Okay, and then the last half hour, what would go in there? Right, is to preview for the next class. How many people are in the regular habit of doing that? Well, it might be a little bit more than this, but not much. Hardly anybody does these. Everybody's good at this. Like professional breakers, you know, and I understand that. Well, what would you do as part of the preview right before class? One thing would be to go over your notes that you took the last time you were there. Kind of get your brain warmed up. Another one would be to preview the textbook. So if your history teacher the last time you were there said, chapter 7 next week, then even if you haven't read the chapter, which would be nice, then spending 10 minutes looking through it and reading the summary and the bold print headings and just kind of seeing what's there, again, helps warm you up for what's to come. So with all of this as sort of background, I wanted to give you one other idea related to this break time, and then we're going to get to our other questions, spend a little time on that. There are about 3 or 4 really good reasons why most students don't do these things. And I wondered if anybody can think of one or has thought of one. Since hardly anybody does this, why is that? Say again? Yeah, thanks for your honesty. That's good. You know what some people say? They say, look, I'm done. When the teacher says we're done, we're done. You know, I don't want to look at it anymore. It takes a lot of effort to do this, so let me just take a nice long break. I get that, okay? That's one. Anybody think of another reason why people don't do these so much? Yeah, you know, this is kind of interesting to me. Some people, when I teach them this is their reaction. That's a good idea, not bad. They've never thought of it one time. Nobody ever taught them about this, so you're not going to do something if you never realized it might be helpful. So they just didn't know. But there's another reason that's kind of a main one that I wanted to talk about just for a minute or two, and that is that some people can't do this. It isn't that they're lazy or they didn't know to do it. They can't. Why would somebody not be able to do this? Because Yeah, because their schedule, the way they schedule their classes, squeeze together. This is a little phrase that you might not have heard of before that's called stacking classes. A lot of people take a class from 8 to 9:15, 9:30 to 10:45, 11 to 12:15, like that. One after the other, back to back to back. And it's called stacking, like stacking plates or dishes. Sometimes students do this because they have to leave the campus at a certain time to go to work or to pick up a child or something else, so they have to squeeze all their classes into a small period. Other people, though, just do it for convenience sake, because if you get all your classes done in the morning, for example, then you're free and you have the rest of the day to leave and do whatever you want. Well, this is something that's not the best way to set up your schedule unless you have to, and some people have to, so that's the way it is. Instead, if you had a class from 8 to 9:15, and then you took a break from 9:15 to 11, then another class from 11 to 12:15, etc., then you would be able to do all of these things, which are very valuable. And of course, the negative here is that you're here longer. When you do this, right, you're on the campus like hours longer. But this brings up one last thing about this, and that is, I want to see a show of hands on this too. How many of you do all or most of your homework or your studying at home? That's the main place that you study. Okay, a lot of you. That's usually what happens. Some people say they do it in the library. Some people do it at Starbucks or wherever else. But those who raise your hand for home, is that a perfect environment for you to study in? Occasionally a student says yes, usually because they live alone, so they have control. But otherwise, and we don't have to go into this, how many temptations and distractions and all that are there around that cause people not to get enough done? Well, there's been a study, a lot of studies done with college students that have found that the average college student, and that may not be you, okay, so there are exceptions, but the average college student can get the same amount done in terms of studying in 1 hour at the library than they can in 3 hours at home. And that's because, at home they call a friend, then they study for 10 minutes, then they're hungry, so they need a snack, so they get one of those, and then they come back, and then 10 minutes later they think, that wasn't enough, so they go back for another snack, and then they watch something on TV for a half hour, and then, got to check my Facebook or whatever, and they're just like all over the place, and they waste a lot of time. When you set up your schedule like this, where you're on campus longer and you have breaks like this, you get more done while you're here. That means there's less to do when you get home. And usually people, when they get to a library, they look around and everybody else is kind of studying, so they're thinking, all right, I guess. And they just get down to business. There aren't as many distractions for most people in a library. So that's the benefit there. Okay, so again, a lot more we could discuss about study time and how to organize that, but that gives you a couple of ideas. We're going to spend the last 15 to 20 minutes of the workshop on a really important topic, which is procrastination. And that is, I want to ask you this question. Everybody here knows the answer to this question. Okay, how do you avoid procrastination? Yeah, somebody gives you something to do, you just do it. Ta-da, right? That sounds easy, right? But why is it not so easy? We have all kinds of struggles. Some people are professional procrastinators. They're so proud of it, they just say, I could teach classes. If you ever want to know how to procrastinate, ask me. Like they're proud of it. Well, whether you procrastinate a tiny bit or whether that is a major problem for you in a lot of areas of life, there are so many reasons why people procrastinate. Sometimes people are afraid of failure. And if you're afraid of failing at something, then you can't even get started because you're just afraid of that. Other people are overwhelmed by how much they have to do. And again, my example of that, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but if you walk into a room in your house or your apartment and it's filled with all kinds of things and you have to clean it up, it's a total mess, you stand there and you look around and you think, okay, where do I start? And you feel like this, and so what do? You say, I know when I start tomorrow. and then you leave and go lie down or whatever. It's just like too overwhelming. Well, one of the things that I want to show you, and this is one of my favorite little illustrations, is that there are a couple of tricks, if you want to call it that, that can help a person who tends to procrastinate a lot to kind of get over that bad habit. The first one that I want to show you is kind of a combination of two, and I'm going to give you an illustration over on the board here. One of them is to make sure to include deadlines. Okay, and then the other one that goes with it, and then I'll kind of explain these, is that it's always a good idea to divide the job into small pieces. Okay, and so let me give you an example of what I mean by this. What is today's date? The 9th. All right, so did anybody here earlier today have a class that you went to that's a tough class, even a very tough class? What's the class? Math. Okay, so we'll use math. That's always a tough one for a lot of people. Let's say that you had a math class and today your teacher made an announcement that nobody wanted to hear, and that is that 2 weeks from today you're going to have a big test. Okay, and so 2 weeks from today is the 23rd. That's the big test. They also say that the test is going to cover chapter 4, 5, and 6. All right, so that's the announcement to the class. Now, no matter how experienced you are as a college student or how new you are, everybody knows what to do with this. You have 2 weeks to go home and read those chapters and learn the information, go over your notes and all the problems you do, and get ready for the test. So it seems really clear and easy. But remember, the person we're talking about here is this person. So on what date is that person going to do all or most of their reading? Yeah, the 22nd, or some people give me a heart attack. They say 23rd, set the alarm for 3 in the morning and get up and study. That's a real procrastinator. Okay, could they have done the reading and the studying all the way along? Yes, but they're a procrastinator, so everything slides to the last minute. That's what a procrastinator does. So how can this person who gets this assignment to study for this test, what can they do so that they won't procrastinate and get a better grade? Well, that's where these two come in. So all you have to do with something like this is a really simple math problem. And here we're talking about math, but this is easy, okay? How many chapters do they have to read? 3. How many days do they have? Well, around 14. Okay. The answer to this, without getting exact with decimals and all that, is between 4 and 5. So what you do is you pick the 4 and you come to here. What's 4 days from today? It's the 13th, then 17th, then 21st. Okay. What do we put here? All right, chapter 4, chapter 5, and chapter 6. Okay. What we just did, which takes like 1 minute to do, is that we've included little deadlines along the way. Those are really important for a procrastinator. This is bad if this is the only deadline because they're going to let everything go. Here are little deadlines, and we've also divided this big job of reading all the material into small pieces. So that's how this looks. Okay, and again, it's not a hard thing to do at all. But there's a problem. This person who makes this schedule could type it up, put it on their refrigerator with a little magnet, and they could walk up to it every day and look at it and say, man, that's the best schedule I've ever seen. But what's their problem? Yeah, doing it. If you could hit all those little deadlines, you wouldn't even be a procrastinator. Okay, so this is the first thing you have to do, but then the question is, and that's what these other 2 things that I'm going to write up here are about, is how can you actually behave yourself and get those things done? What's the trick? Okay, and the best trick I know that has cured more people of procrastination than anything else is a very simple one. This is sort of a life skill or a life truth also. but I want to explain how it works here, and that is to be accountable to someone. Okay, this phrase, be accountable to someone, usually means to be responsible to someone, obligated to them, to answer to them. If you work, who are you accountable to? Your boss, right? If you're living at home as a child, teenager, or whatever, you're accountable to your parent or parents. Everybody's accountable to somebody in different situations. So how does this actually work here? Well, here's what you do. On this day that you make this beautiful schedule that you admire, but you don't trust yourself to keep, you think of someone you know, a friend, a relative, somebody, who is kind of a reliable, responsible person. Hopefully you know somebody like that. And you call them today and you say, I have a math test coming up in 2 weeks. I have a beautiful schedule, but I know how I am. I'm not going to keep it. So could you do me a really big favor? I'm supposed to have chapter 4 read and the problem's done by the time I go to bed on the 13th. Could you call me that night at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock and just make sure I did what I was supposed to do? Okay, so this person says, okay, chapter 4, 13th, okay, got it. As soon as you hang up, you're going to be sorry you called, because now somebody else knows your plan. And what does that mean? If somebody else knows it, it means you kind of have to do it. But that's good. But then you're thinking, oh, I should never have told anybody. Well, how much of your math chapter 4 are you going to do today? Probably none. How about tomorrow? Probably none. You're starting to procrastinate already. On the 11th, how much are you going to do? Well, on the 11th or the 12th, one of those 2 days, you're going to walk by your book. And most students just say they like to walk by their books and wave, you know, as they keep going. So they walk and go, how are you today? And they keep going. And then when it gets to like the 12th, they walk by it again and start to wave. And then this is the thought that always comes to the person's mind. They look at the book and they think, the call is coming. It's like this monster, you know, that's hanging over them. It's going to come tonight or tomorrow night. And so what do because of that? Grab it, open it up, start reading. Now, I've had people, this is kind of sad, funny and sad. I've had people say that they opened up their book knowing that their friend or their relative was going to call the next day, and they opened the book and they were angry at the person who's going to call them. You know, this poor person who's just doing you a favor, like, I can't believe they're going to call me. Well, but see, look what you're doing. You're actually sitting there reading, so you're not procrastinating. And then when they call you that night, you say, hopefully, you know what? I finished an hour ago. I've been waiting for you to call. Or I finished yesterday. It's the first time in my life I ever finished anything 1 day early. So thank you very much for calling. And then what's the next thing you say to them after that? Yeah, could you do me another favor? Could you call back on the 17th to see if I did chapter 5? The reason you need to do that is because if you have a bad habit, you can get out of it for a little while. And then we all tend to start going back into the bad habits again. And so just because you had one victory, which is good, that doesn't mean this is going to be a victory in this. And so they're calling you at the deadline. Now, again, I want to make sure you're clear on this. Are they supposed to call you every day? No. If somebody thinks they have to call you every day and say, are you studying? Are you studying? You're going to get so upset with them, you're going to lose them as a friend, and you don't want to lose a friend. They just call you one time, and that's at the deadline to see if you did what you were supposed to do. So many people end up getting much more disciplined and hitting all their deadlines because there's somebody else checking on them. And that's all it takes, and suddenly they become much, much better at this. Okay, so that's the first idea. And then the other one, and then I have one last thing that I want to share. Sign-in sheet is making it around? Yes? Okay. Have you signed over here? Yes? Okay, good. All right. The other motivational tool, in addition to this one, is this one, and that's always include rewards. Okay? I don't think I've ever met a person who told me, I hate rewards. Those are horrible. Everybody likes rewards. Okay? Well, how does it work? What does it look like here? Here's what you do. When you have a few minutes and you take a nice deep breath, maybe out on a bench if the weather is nice, so you're kind of in a good mood, you either take a little 3x5 card, like a flashcard or even a piece of paper, and you just brainstorm, bless you, for a couple minutes, and you write down a list of everything that you would like to do or buy or get. It's kind of like your birthday list, sort of. And you just write down everything you can think of, okay? And then on this day, today, after you have called your friend, so you know that you have that motivation there, you say, I need more motivation. So what I'm going to do is, if I have chapter 4 read by the time I go to bed that night, I'm going to go do that. So it's just right there. That's your reward. You can see it, and you can almost taste it. Maybe if it's food, you almost can taste it, okay? And so then on that day, you finish your chapter. You're able to tell your friend, thank you for calling, I did it, I finished. And then you go and do that or buy that. Okay, that's the reward method. Okay, the only problem with this, and I always have to caution people about it, this is the important word. Okay, if you are rich and you're just going to college for fun, do whatever you want. Okay, but for everybody else who's kind of on a budget, I have had students before I started telling them this, and they actually did what I just explained, but they really spoiled themselves with really nice rewards, and by the end of the semester they never procrastinated on anything, so they were cured, but their credit cards were maxed out, and I thought they were going to bring me their bills and all of that. So you don't want to be writing, you know, go to a play, go to a concert. Yeah, it's $100, but it's a concert. I love that group. You're going to go broke, okay? What can you think of that's free that would motivate you? Some people say nothing, but you have to think of things, simple things that you would look forward to. And so that's where the rewards come in. Some people use one of these. Sometimes people use both. It's whatever works is good. And again, it kind of gets you rolling. Okay. I got one more thing I want to share with you. Any questions about any of this? Okay. The last idea related to procrastination that I'm going to share with you has to do with a modified or a changed to-do list. I don't know how many of you have ever written a to-do list before you went to bed or when you got up in the morning of the things you have to do that day. Some people are list people, other people not so much. But this is called the ABC priority method. And this has helped a lot of students to avoid procrastinating, especially on important things. If you do this correctly, the way that I'm going to show you, it should take you at the very most 5 minutes per day. So no matter how busy you are, everybody could do this. The first thing you do, and you can do this again at night before you go to bed or while you're eating breakfast or whatever in the morning, is what some of you have done before. You write a list of every activity that you need to do or would like to do that day or the following day. Okay, you just jot it all down. Not just school, but life, just things you have to do, okay? And then the next thing to do is where the name of this method comes from, and that is you look at all of these activities and ask yourself a really simple question, which is, out of all of these, which ones are by far the most important? And if I don't get them done today, I'm going to be in big trouble. Next to each one of those, you put the letter A, which means top priority. You look at all the rest of them and ask the next question, which is, which of these other ones are important? And I should do them, but if I don't, it's not going to kill me. Those are medium, so those are the B's. Okay, and then what goes next to all the other ones? C. That's where the name comes from. And what are C's? They're just the least important. If you have time to do them, great. If not, who cares? This takes a minute or two. This takes a minute or two, and then there's one more step that seems to be the final thing that helps people get a lot done, and that is you go back and you look only at the A activities. It's just for those. And you try to think about your schedule, all that you have to do that day, and you try to pick a specific time that you're scheduling yourself to do that activity. Okay, so one of them might be from 8 to 10 p.m. Maybe it's studying for a test that's the next day, so that would be a very high priority. This might be a 5-minute phone call, but it's an important one, and so you're going to make that at noon. This one might be from 3 to 4 p.m., and this one might be from 9 to 10 a.m., something like that. So you actually schedule these times almost like doctor's appointments. And I don't know about you, but whenever I have a doctor's appointment, I know about it. I write it down, and when that day comes, I make sure that everything kind of revolves around being there when I'm supposed to be, because it's an important appointment. If you treat these the same way, then you should get them done, no problem. And so this brings me to the last idea here, and that is when the day is over, or as the day goes on, you cross off everything that you do. And I want to have you take a quick look at this. Let's say that you get to the end of this day, and you mark it off like this. I did this and this, this, that, and that. Okay? Is that a good day or a bad day? Yeah, some people say it's okay. And I say, why just okay? They say, well, you only did about half. But what did you get done? You got all the A's done. You had time along the way to do 1B and 1C, so you didn't procrastinate on any of the important things. So that was successful. But then what happens to all of those? Okay, they go on the next day's schedule along with new things. What happens to the letters? Yeah, they might stay the same, but usually they go up. They'd almost never go down. Something that was not very important, a couple days later, it's still on the list. You haven't done it, now it's a B, and then it may become an A, and so you just kind of rotate over. These two steps that are added to just the normal writing things down and focusing on it usually help people to get way more done. And sometimes the things that are the most important for you to do, the A's, are things that you don't want to do and tend to procrastinate on. And by doing this, it sort of focuses your attention so that you accomplish more. And this has helped a lot of people, and it's a very simple thing to do. So definitely worth a try, kind of experimenting. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, well, I remembered, so I'm going to go ahead and give you a copy of the blank time management schedule. If you end up using this as scratch paper, oh well, that's okay. But if you want to just try, it's not that you have to fill out every day and be all that detailed about it, but if you want to just try it and experiment on a few things, that would be good. And as I said, some people like to use this as a master so that they can make several copies and then just experiment with different ways of doing things. So hopefully that'll help. And if you try this out and you want me to take a look at see what you're doing with it, you can always come and talk to me. Okay? All right, let me take a quick look. You can go ahead and pack up, but I want to make sure again always I want to read these teachers' names. Okay, that's good. I'll go ahead and email these people later today. Thanks for coming. Next week is all about improving your listening skills. So if you have trouble concentrating when teachers are talking, that's a good one. Hopefully you'll be here.